Hi, my name is Brandon Stone. I'm here today with Groupo Sinco consulting firm, and we're going to be talking about cross-cultural and co-cultural issues. And today we're working with Kaizen Automotive Groups. Congratulations for getting hired on with Kaizen Automotive. It's an excellent company, and today we're going to talk about how you can be even better employees. So, the name of our consulting firm is Groupo Sinco. Today we're going to be working with you to discuss cross-cultural and co-cultural issues. We're going to break down some of those issues. We're going to further define some of the terms that we need to discuss. And basically in doing this, we're going to celebrate diversity, and we're going to come up with ways for you to be aware of cultural issues so that you can have a better professional and personal working relationship with your peers and with Kaizen Automotive.
Before we get started with our presentation, we're going to start off with an icebreaker. What we're going to do is we're going to group into pairs of fives, and we're going to be sharing this with our coworkers. I need you to share what your name is, where you're from, one interesting fact about yourself, and what you hope to learn from today's presentation.
And we'll talk a little bit about our agenda today. We're going to talk about differentiate the terms race, ethnicity, and culture. We'll be identifying barriers towards effective cross-cultural communication. We'll be explaining effective practices for effective cross-cultural communication. We'll explain the concept of co-cultural communication. And we will also be identifying barriers for individuals communicating across different generational groups.
All right. So, first thing we're going to do is discuss the terms race, culture, and ethnicity. We hear about these terms a lot in the news. We talk a lot about these terms. Let's define these terms, and then we're going to talk about why that's important to your job with Kaizen Automotive. So the term race. Merriam-Webster defines race as family, tribe, people, or nation belonging to the same stock. So typically when we discuss race, we're talking about outward appearance. We're talking about genetic features. These would be things like eye color, skin color, things that are perhaps more easily recognizable from a visual standpoint. Next, we're going to talk about ethnicity. When we define ethnicity, we look for common and distinctive culture, religion, language, or the like. Ethnicities are not so visually apparent. By looking at somebody, you may not be able to determine what their ethnicity is as easily as you might be able to determine what their race is. This is often brought about by where you are grown up, where you grow up, and who you grow up with. Finally, let's talk about culture. We define culture as beliefs, customs, arts, etc. for a particular society. Typically, you're going to develop a culture that is unique to the individuals or the society that you grow up in. In America, we have an American culture. Culture is also not as apparent when looking at somebody. It's hard to determine somebody's culture just by looking at them, unless they have symbols that determine their culture. So, why is it important to understand these three words? Why is it important? Because in Kaizen Automotive, this is a very diverse work group. You're going to be working with lots of individuals. So understanding race, ethnicity, and culture will help you develop a good professional working relationship with the people around you. Being sensitive to those issues will help you have a professional working relationship as well.
What is cross-cultural communication? When we think of communication, we think of our everyday lives, the way we communicate messages to the people that we encounter. Have you ever thought that it would be different to communicate with somebody that's not from your country, that's not from your region? Things vary. These are things that we need to keep into consideration when we are working for Kaizen Automotive. According to Deborah Tannen, cross-cultural communication is the various forms of dialect speech, patterns, and ways of communication. These will vary greatly depending on the area that you grew up in, your language influences, your ethnicity, your class, and your gender. Acceptable communication etiquettes vary depending on the culture. Cross-cultural communication is basically accepting the boundaries set forth in each culture and embracing them and adjusting them to fit your needs. Now, this form of communication allows us to effectively communicate with whoever it is that we encounter and across any boundaries or obstacles that are in our way. Now, there are some barriers to cross-cultural communication. The first is, when is it appropriate to speak? What should I say?
I think that
For example, that's a perfect example. We need to know when it is appropriate for us to speak. That way we're not interrupting anybody else. Secondly, what should you say once you've started to speak? How fast should you talk? We have to keep into consideration that there may be language barriers. You don't want to be speaking too quickly. Your message may be lost in transit. Also, make sure that you're listening. That is a very important part of cross-cultural communication. And also make sure that you are being direct and clear when you're speaking. Now, some effective practices for cross-cultural communication is first, know who your audience is. Plan out what your message is and how you like to portray that message. Again, be clear and direct with your audience and be mindful of your tone and how fast you're speaking.
Hi, my name is Mark Harmon, and I'm going to discuss with you co-cultural communication. Co-cultural communication refers to the concept of communication between cultural groups. The term co-cultural is coined in an effort to avoid the negative connotation of previous terms such as minorities, inferiors, subordinates, etc. Co-cultural is intended to indicate that both cultural groups are equal in status and neither should hold power or privilege over the other. Co-cultural communication is studied in an effort to recognize and eliminate the power dynamics that one cultural group exerts over another in communications. One may see evidence of such power dynamics where one cultural group exhibits obvious differences from another group, such as differences in language, nationality, age, sex, or race. An example of such a power dynamic may be seen in a meeting where an audience is listening to a presentation given by a speaker from another country who speaks with an accent. The audience may feel frustrated over differences in pronunciation and may judge the speaker and their content negatively because of language issues.
Hi, it's Jo Beth again, and we're going to talk a little bit about how do we identify barriers for individuals that communicate across different generational groups. So we know in today's society, there's many different ages and generations that have to work together. So do different generations really communicate so differently? Well, yes, they do, especially when it comes to phone calls versus email, texting, and even tweeting. Younger generations may communicate quite differently than older generations. Because Kaizen employees comprise all age ranges, extra effort is required to ensure that everyone communicates effectively and works together to make Kaizen Automotive a work-friendly and efficient environment. So let's talk about our first group. We would like to call these the oldies, but the goodies. They're the traditionalists. They're generally born before 1945, and they've had some exposure to the Great Depression. If you know anything about this period in time, this was very hard, and work was very hard. So this group, this generational group, relates pay to performing hard work. They usually stay with one employer for most of their career. They're not enthusiastic about technology because they find it, I think, less personal and sensitive. And they have a greater emphasis on work ethic and values. And they prefer face-to-face communication versus an email. Our next generational group are baby boomers. This group was born between 1946 and 1964. They respect authority, and they're often found in higher management. They offer more ideas than your traditionalists, and they generally would prefer to lead than to follow, and they're more adaptable to change. They're agreeable to technology, but they usually prefer a phone call to an email. The next generational group are your Generation Xers. Now, these were born between 1965 and 1982. Now, they know and understand technology, and they prefer to use it. They realize that it makes life easier. They demand individuality, and they like multitasking. This generation isn't afraid of technology, and they love new gadgets. Communication is often short and to the point, and email is their preferred method. Finally, let's talk about our youngest of the generational groups, the millennials. They were born between 1983 and 2000. They expect and they demand technology in every form. They're lost without the internet or gadgets that do everything for them, from email to find directions to where to eat out at night. They use short, quick emails as well as texting and mobile phone apps to communicate, and are surprised when others don't do this. They expect work to be fun, and they seek flexible work atmospheres. They work well in any group, including diverse groups. They like to speed up processes. This is technology today, though. At the moment, they expect results. As far as communication, they keep it simple. They enjoy a creative workplace, and they like to think outside the box. If a new way is needed, they're most likely to find the correct resource. Talking down to is not accepted well by this age group, as they expect everyone to be on the same level. As with the Generation Xers, visuals are more effective than document reading.
So, to recap, why is it important to cover these topics? Why is it important that we understand and use this information? America is the melting pot of the world. The likelihood that you're going to be working in a very diverse cultural atmosphere is very high. Kaizen Automotive is one of the best employers around, and they hire the best and the brightest from all over the world. So you'll be working with people of different race, different ethnicities, and different cultures. You'll be working with individuals that are older and younger than you. So it's important that we understand these topics.
And to kind of just feed in on that, just remember how important it is to understand, no matter what your age is, that just because someone's younger than you doesn't mean that they can't have the capability to communicate appropriately. It's just maybe they're more into technology, and we have to be open-minded. But also to remember those that are older that maybe haven't been exposed to things that are more efficient. It's always better to just open up and be willing to communicate with each other and maybe even teach one another.
Remember, just be prepared. You don't know who it is that you're going to encounter, what their background is or their culture. You definitely want to remember to know your audience, know your message, be clear and direct, and just accept their boundaries, accept what their culture has set forth for you, work with it, and relay the message the best that you can.
Remember, everyone comes to meet people with biases and their own set of thought patterns that govern how they act. It's important for everyone to recognize biases in themselves and how they react to people, so as to diminish the power of these mechanisms in themselves and effectively communicate with others.
So, thank you so much. Congratulations for getting on with Kaizen Automotive. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Have a great day.